Good evening, everybody. Tonight we're in class three, David in the Caves. It's a interesting class because I think this is the recording of David's lowest point, kind of emotionally. What we're going to look at is kind of two specific passages in Samuel that we went all around last week. Last week we covered a lot of kind of events in Samuel's life, and this week, or events in David's life. This week we're just going to look at two passages in David's life that relate to four different Psalms. But what we're talking about is David in the cave. So after David goes on the run from Saul, he spends some time, we're not told exactly how long, hiding in caves and in old fortresses in the desert. Now, why he's doing that? Because he's waiting, I think, for God to work his own will in his life, and then he chooses not to kind of force the issue of becoming king. That's the thing to remember, that David was anointed, right, as king by Samuel, and then the existing king, Saul, kicks him out as, David was Saul's general. He's fired by Saul, and David chooses not to kind of lead a rebellion or take the kingdom. He waits for God to give him his kingdom. I think that's really interesting because in that time, David is pretty deeply depressed or frustrated, as we'll see. And so, and I think that can happen to all of us, that life sometimes comes in a way that you didn't expect. Maybe there's things you wanted that you don't get, and we can hear ourselves praying to God that, oh, why is this working out this way? If you promised certain things, why aren't they coming? So that's what we'll see as an example in David's life. So I'm gonna open up my slides now. Uh-oh, I'm way too many. So yeah, David in the cave. Week one was an introduction. We looked at David on the run yesterday, David running from Saul, as we talked about. Now we're going to look at David in the caves. And next week we'll do David and the wedding of his son, and then week 5 we'll talk about David in the temple. Remember, kind of the basis of this class are these headers that we've talked about. So I've copied Psalm 57, which we're going to be looking at, and all of our Bibles have these headers. And some of our Bibles have the translators' headers. So what we're talking about is how, if you look on the left, it says Psalm 57 out of the English Standard Version, "Let your glory be over all the earth." Or I've got another version in front of me, the New American Standard, is the Bible I'm reading at my desk here, and it says "Prayer for rescue from persecutors." It doesn't say "Let your glory be over all the earth." It says "Prayer for rescue from persecutors." So that's the translator's header. That's just the header that whoever translated this Bible decided to use. What we've been paying attention to is the next line. Some of these Psalms have headers that are there in the text. So Psalm 57 says, "To the choir master, according to do not destroy, a miktam of David when he fled from Saul in the cave." And you see on the right side there, I pulled the original language out of a study Bible online, and you see that to the chief musician, according to the tasketh, which I think is "do not destroy," which is translated there in the ESV, and the king of David when he fled from Saul in the cave. So all of those have, you see there, Hebrew words. So they were written in the original text. And then it gets into verse 1. "Be merciful to me, O God, be merciful to me, for in you my soul takes refuge." So that's what we've been looking at. There's 14 of these Psalms that say that they've been specifically written of David. Of David. So David wrote Psalm 57. We know that for sure because it says so in Psalm 57. So that's been the basis of our study, as you know, if you've been with us for these previous weeks. We're looking at these headers, kind of the specific information that these headers share with us. So let's go back to the text, back to 1 Samuel. We spent all of our time here in 1 Samuel last week. So open up your Bibles, looking at 1 Samuel 22. And we're going to review, because we've kind of been looking at like a 6-8 chapter chunk here, especially around David on the run. So as a review, we'll just flip through our pages. Chapter 16 of 1 Samuel, 1 Samuel 16, David is anointed by Samuel as the future king, even though Saul is currently the king. Chapter 17 of 1 Samuel, David defeats Goliath and is then made a general in Saul's army because of that. Chapter 18 is the beginning of David and Jonathan's friendship, and David marries Michal, Saul's daughter, and then we start to see Saul turning on David. He's protected from David even though they surround his house, which we talked about last week in chapter 19. And then he escapes with the help of Jonathan. And chapter 21, David begins running away from Saul. And then in chapter 22, we have the story of Doeg the Edomite, which we looked at last week. And then he lives with the Philistines for a while. Chapter 23 and 24, and kind of stays on the run all the way until the end of 1 Samuel. But I wanted to look at a specific passage here, 1 Samuel 22, 1 through 5. We skipped over this last week, but there's a couple of important things we're going to look at. 1 Samuel 22, beginning of verse 1. So David departed there and escaped to the cave of Adullam. And when his brothers and all his father's household heard of it, they went down there to him, and everyone who was in distress, and everyone who was in debt, and everyone who was discontented gathered to him, and he became a captain over them. Now there were about 400 men with him. Now, and David went from there to Israel of Moab, and he said to the king of Moab, "Please let my father and my mother come and stay with you until I know what God will do for me." Very interesting phrase there, until I know what God will do for me. Then he left with them with the king of Moab, and they stayed with them all the time that David was in the stronghold. And the prophet Gad said to David, "Do not stay in the stronghold, depart, and go into the land of Judah. So David departed and went into the forest of Hera. So, like I said, I think it's fascinating that when David runs from the cave to Moab, he says to the king of Moab, "Let my family stay with you until I know what God will do for me." I want to hold on to that phrase because I think that is very interesting. That's David saying out loud in the text here, in the story, that he is waiting to find out what God will do for him, right? Instead of yeah.
We got really bad feedback. It sort of comes and goes. Let's both try and disconnect and reconnect and see if that helps.
Okay, sure.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay.